But the Prophet ﷺ goes further. He says, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, "Man hajara akhahu sanatan fahuwa kasafki damihi." It gets a little more complex. When you abandon your brother for a year, we know the sin of abandoning your brother for 3 days or your sister for 3 days. When you boycott your brother or your sister for a year, it's as if you're spilling their blood at that point. You might as well be spilling their blood. That's the grievousness of the sin in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If there are people in here that are not talking to each other, go say salam to that person. Go say salam to that person. Don't be that person who falls under this category. SubhanAllah, he even brings us, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, to the bare minimum. Atadruna man al-Muslim? That's what he says to them. By the way, do you know what a Muslim is? Of course we know. We're all Muslims. We came from around the world. We're doing Hajj in the way of our father Ibrahim alayhi salam, the great Muslim, the one who submits to Allah. No, but do you know who the real Muslim is? Do you know who the real mu'min is? Al-Muslimu man salima an-nas min lisanihi wa yadihi, wal-mu'minu man aminahu an-nas ala dima'ihim wa amwalihim. A Muslim is the one who people feel safe from their tongues and from their hands. Your tongue is more lethal than your hand sometimes. Your tongue is more people go to hell because of this than this. Because of what they do with their tongues. A Muslim is the one from whom other people feel salam, they feel safe from their tongues and from their hands. And a mu'min, a believer, is someone who people feel like they can trust. They have security from them with their wealth and with their blood, with their lives. The Prophet ﷺ did not spare a single moment to connect them to something they can always remember. The bare minimum of calling yourself a Muslim, performing Eid, performing Hajj, connected to the way you treat everyone. Why? Because when you skew your perception of God, then you skew your perception of self, and you skew your perception of the world around you as well, people included. They didn't just turn God into stones and idols. They dehumanized everyone else as a result and turned themselves into gods. So when your perception of Allah is messed up, your perception of self is messed up, your perception of people around you is messed up. Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu says, we were sitting with the Prophet ﷺ, and a man started to gossip, to backbite. And the Prophet ﷺ said to him, "Takhallal, pick your teeth." You know when you finish a meal and you got something in your mouth, and you say, "Hey, you got some spinach in your teeth?" The Prophet ﷺ said, "You have something in your teeth, pick it." He said, "Ya Rasulullah, what are you talking about?" He says, "Innaka akalta lahma akhik." Hadith sahih. You just ate the meat of your brother. You just consumed the flesh of your brother. What do your teeth look like when you finish sitting with people? What do your teeth look like when you finish a conversation? SubhanAllah, this tongue, which is the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we could remember Allah and elevate ourselves. More people will end up bankrupt on the Day of Judgment because of this tongue than anything else. Something so irrelevant, so silly. You throw something out there, a comment out there about your brother or sister. Irrelevant context, history, a slick comment. That person is a this and that person is a that. And you let it run and run and run and run. And Ibn Rajab rahimahullah ta'ala says, he says that backbiting is the easiest sin to access. And the worst sin when you're standing at the mizan on the Day of Judgment, when you're standing at the scale on the Day of Judgment. Of course, shirk is the greatest, but he's talking about bain and nas, between people. He said backbiting is accessible to someone who is poor and someone who is rich. Accessible to someone who is in power and someone who is persecuted. It's accessible to the literate and to the illiterate. Everyone talks, the young, the old. People talk about other people, especially when you have emptiness in yourself. Then all you do is you talk about everybody else. And it doesn't matter what position you are in society, this has become the historical pastime of people to talk about everybody else and talk about other things. The young and the old, the rich and the poor, the powerful and the persecuted. And that is the main reason why people will have their good deeds taken away from them on the Day of Judgment. Their Laylatul Qadr, their Arafah, their Hajj, taken away from them on the Day of Judgment. May Allah protect us.